Okay, I'm taking
the
this
lawyer.
one. There you go. So I was in the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. And I'll tell you, as everyone realizes, that when you dilute the voting power of a particular population, the one person, one vote is essentially a myth. If you tell them that they're going to be separated and can never actually vote for a candidate that they're choosing or have the opportunity to have that candidate elected, that's problematic. And before you give me that squint, don't tell me that Republicans have fewer offices in the New England or wherever. But the crux of the matter is the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was designed to make sure that voting strength was universal. And if you dilute that power through gerrymandering and separating districts, then you do undermine the ability to do that very thing.
Their power
that's
to do
exactly
what,
to elect a candidate of their choosing, not entitled to the winner, but a candidate of your.
Scott Jennings said gerrymandering doesn't undermine black political power because black voters still cast a ballot. One person, one vote. Same before, same after. Laura Coates, a former DOJ civil rights attorney, cut him off before he could finish. Don't give me that squint. Welcome to the debate, Chaz. Legal expertise met a talking point today. The talking point didn't survive. Let's get into it.
In Alabama, a federal court blocked the state from using a GOP-drawn map in the upcoming midterm elections. The three-judge panel called it unfair to black voters, and I should note, 2 of those judges were Trump appointees. Now let's go to South Carolina, where early voting began just today. And the state Senate defied Trump's push for a new map that would have drawn Congressman James Clyburn right out of his district. 14 Republicans voted to kill that plan.
But I can no longer support passage of this bill for one simple reason. South Carolina citizens are going to the polls today. And neither my conscience nor my common sense will allow me to stop an election that is already underway.
The panel is back with me. All right, Shermichael, you know that you risk some wrath from President Trump when you defy his orders. So, did they do?
FYI.
No, he
Okay.
cannot.
No, not Article 3. But tell me what you think about the idea of the message they're sending by doing this.
Yeah, look, South Carolina, I'm not surprised. I've known Congressman Clyburn for a very, very long time. I have great admiration for him. And he has built over decades relationships with Republicans in that state, including the governor. They like him. That stuff matters. You go to Alabama, the South, I'm a Southerner. There's a complicated history there with Black Americans and white Americans. But over time, political officials have built relationships with each other to try to make these systems work as best as possible. So despite the president's edict to move forward with gerrymandering, a lot of these officials are saying, wait a minute here, our relationships will continue beyond the Trump presidency. And I think many of the political leaders are looking at it through that lens and saying, perhaps this isn't the right approach, the ethical approach to disenfranchise our friends, even though we may politically disagree. That's the way I look at this.
Well, that would give people a little bit more grace, and I think we've seen in the sense that some people are looking very short-sighted and thinking, you know what? Yes, maybe down the road democracy will be questioned, but today I got to stay in office. I'm following Trump.
Well, a lot of people have made that decision that, I'm going to make a party decision. Now, in South Carolina, the election was going on, and so they did have an out. And that's what I think a lot of them were arguing. They may come back and redraw this in 28 and turn it into a 7-0 map. So, it's one seat. Would it be nice to have when the fight for the House is going to be, I think, pretty nip-tuck? Absolutely. Is it the end of the world? No. Will it catch the president's attention that a bunch of Republican office holders in a state that he won by a bajillion points defied his views?
And what's the consequence of that?
Of course it will. Well, what happened in the state of Indiana? Where you had state senators who defied him on what they wanted to do there, and he took out several of them in the Indiana primary. Now, again, the election's going on in South Carolina, so this might get punted down the road, both in terms of dealing with those people and dealing with a new map. But, that's what's going on.
But Alabama was interesting, though, Scott. They didn't necessarily, the courts didn't have to rule the way they did. No. They're uber conservative judges there, and they decided to nevertheless, I wouldn't say that.
In fact, let me read you a part. Let me read a part of this. Is they actually say we cannot see our way clear to requiring Alabamians to cast their votes in the 2026 elections under a districting plan tainted by intentional race-based discrimination. They didn't necessarily have to worry about it at all. And frankly, the South Carolinians, they saw what happened in Indiana and acted anyway. Did that surprise you?
Let's start with what actually happened. In Alabama, a 3-judge federal panel, 2 Trump appointees, blocked a GOP-drawn map from the upcoming midterms. Their language was explicit. They could not require Alabamians to vote under a plan tainted by intentional race-based discrimination. Not alleged, intentional. These were judges appointed by the same president whose gerrymandering directive they were overruling. In South Carolina, 14 Republican state senators killed a map that would have drawn Jim Clyburn out of his own district, with early voting already underway. One senator said neither his conscience nor his common sense would allow him to stop an election already in progress. Clyburn has spent decades building genuine bipartisan relationships across South Carolina, bringing federal resources to the entire state.
You know, listen, I'm from the South, and there's a saying that God don't like ugly. And so
I've heard that in a long time. My
listen,
grandmother.
Get back in church, okay? Get back in church. So from
You just said they weren't there. In the last segment. So, okay, go ahead. Be where you are.
so
Go ahead.
Talarico can
Be
reach
where you are.
Okay, nevertheless. No, so my point is there clearly are still some reasonable Republicans that are left in their party, nationally and locally, that objected to what has become sort of a heavy-handed approach from Trump and the Supreme Court to undermine Black political power all across the South. And, you know, there was a whispering campaign early on after the Voting Rights Act was dismantled that this is likely going to have, and I heard it from Congressman Figures, whose district is one in Alabama that they were trying to draw out, that this is going to backfire on them. And now we're seeing it actually backfire.
Well, how about for Democrats? I want to hear your point, but I'm curious, as a strategist particularly, there had been a lot of concern and hope from Democratic voters that Democrats would play and meet fire with fire. But now that there is a more, let's call it tempered response in terms of South Carolina or Alabama through the courts, does this now disincentivize Democrats to fight that fire with fire by redrawing their maps?
That was fire with fire 3 months ago. The clock has run out on all these primaries. People are already voting in almost every place. Scott was right about that. And in South Carolina, the old man in South Carolina who's been there a long time, Clyburn's brought a lot of money. And that money didn't go to just red places or blue places. It came to the whole state. And folks pretty much agree that the Democrats will take control of at least the House. And they know Clyburn to be in a position of power to bring all the money that he's always brought back to South Carolina. And Clyburn's old school. Clyburn gets along with lots of people down there. He has a fish fry. He's not one of these flame-throwing folks down there. Like, there's still folks that like him down there. I think that's why you saw this.
So if this weren't Clyburn, though.
That kind of institutional respect does not evaporate because Washington wants a favorable map. It also helped that the NAACP and HBCUs had made clear a boycott was on the table, and South Carolina officials understood exactly what that would cost them economically. Then came Jennings. His position was simple. VRA challenges don't undermine Black political power because every voter still has a ballot. They still go to the polls. They can still vote for anyone listed. One person, one vote. Same as always. Coates dismantled it with the precision of someone who spent years in the system being described. When you take communities that could form a majority in a district and scatter them across multiple districts where they become a minority in each, the one person, one vote principle becomes a mathematical myth. The individual ballot exists. The collective power to elect someone who actually represents the community does not. That is the difference between having the right to vote and having the power that vote is supposed to carry. Jennings responded by claiming her argument assumes Black voters must aim their power at one party. Coates corrected the misreading directly. Her argument was about voting power, not partisanship. If the goal truly were one person, one vote, there would have been no reason to dissect Memphis the way it was dissected. The map choices reveal the intent far more honestly than any stated justification. The Democratic strategists raise the view that keeps getting lost in the individual victories. Alabama and South Carolina look good right now, but this is a multi-cycle strategy. The dismantling of the Voting Rights Act was not designed to win one midterm. It was designed to reshape the political landscape across a generation. The wins are real. They are also moments in a much longer fight over whether the constitutional promise of equal representation means anything in practice.
Clyburn, though, yes, but if it weren't Clyburn, are you saying that they would have done something different? Or is it the fact that, I mean, is it more than just Clyburn's district that was at stake?
I mean, I think we should not lose sight of the fact that this is a long game for Republicans. The undermining of VRA is not just about this particular midterm. It's about midterms. So I think Democrats are going to continue to fight fire with fire because we understand that this isn't just about November. Again, it's a long-term play to undermine Black political power.
How does the Calais case, the VRA case, undermine black political power. All black Americans, all white Americans, all Americans before the Calais case had one vote, and now they all still have the franchise and they have one vote. Why is it undermining black political power just to take away an artificial floor of Democratic seats?
Oh, me.
Go for
Okay,
it.
I'm taking
the
this one.
lawyer.
There you go.
on your end.
So I was in the voting section of the Civil Rights Division. And I'll tell you, as everyone realizes, that when you dilute the voting power of a particular population, the one person, one vote is essentially a myth. If you tell them that they're going to be separated and can never actually vote for a candidate they're choosing or have the opportunity to have that candidate elected, that's problematic. And before you give me that squint, don't tell me that Republicans have fewer offices in the New England or wherever. But the crux of the matter is the Voting Rights Act of 1965 was designed to make sure that voting strength was universal. And if you dilute that power through gerrymandering and separating districts, then you do undermine the ability to do that very thing.
Their power
That's
to do
exactly
what, though?
to elect a candidate of their choosing, not entitled to the winner, but a candidate of your choosing.
But they're going to go to the polls and they're going to see names on a ballot and they can vote for anybody on that ballot they want. To me, the underpinning of your argument is black political power must be aimed only at one political party. I think the conservative argument here is that black voters, white voters, any voters in any community ought to expect out of both parties an argument, what's best for me as an individual American voter.
Well,
And
your
so to try to
argument
group people together and
is-
say you all are forced to vote for one kind of a candidate, aka
Yeah,
Democrats.
I hear you, Scott, but you're not quoting my argument. You're quoting someone else's. Mine is actually directly related to the voting power, and it's not about partisanship. You asked the question as to why and how it could undermine black voting strength. If what you say is true, there would have been no reason to dissect Memphis in the way that it was. If what you say was true, there'd be no reason to gerrymander district with a goal towards what President Trump spoke about, trying to add particular numbers to one particular side. I think people universally do want one person, one vote to actually be the case. But with gerrymandering, that can't exist. Stand by, everyone. We've got more to talk about. Yeah, it's my show.
Think about what the Jennings argument actually concedes. He acknowledges that communities can be carved up, scattered, and sorted across districts in ways that eliminate their ability to elect anyone who reflects their values or addresses their specific needs. And his position is that this is acceptable because the individual ballot remains technically available. That is a very specific and very narrow definition of voting rights. It is the definition that says the right to vote is satisfied by the act of marking a ballot, regardless of whether that ballot ever translates into representation, influence, or accountability from the people who are supposed to serve you. Laura Coates came to that panel with years of experience in the federal agency whose entire purpose is to ensure that voting strength is universal and not diluted by the political convenience of whoever draws the maps. When she said the one person, one vote principle becomes a myth under gerrymandering, she was not making a partisan argument. She was describing what the Voting Rights Act was specifically designed to address, and what its partial dismantling was specifically designed to undo. The fight is not over with 2 court victories. The maps will be redrawn. The legal challenges will continue. And the question of whether black political power will be systematically diluted across the South through legal processes, legislative maneuvering, and constitutional revision remains very much open. Leave your thoughts in the comments. Do you think the courts can continue to hold the line on racial gerrymandering without a restored Voting Rights Act? And what do the Alabama and South Carolina outcomes tell you about the limits of Trump's control over his own party at the state level? Subscribe to the Debate Chaz. We will keep watching every map, every district, and every ruling until the pattern is impossible to ignore.